Mr. Green sits at the edge of a rough-set wooden raft, his feet dangling in the water below as the noise of the heavy rain drowns out any other sound. From time to time, the water has thrust his feet against the varied assortment of plastic drums and jerry cans as he stares intently at a rope tethered to the edge of the raft. It is dark, but his eyes have adjusted to it. It is cold too, but he chooses to ignore it, making do with an umbrella alone to stave off the rain while he continues to watch. Suddenly, the rope pulls taut. Mr. Green springs to action and begins to steadily and carefully pull on the rope, dragging something up from beneath the depths. As he pulls, he looks around, still amazed by the sight of his new surroundings. Lightning flashes, illuminating nothing for miles around. But Mr. Green's eye catches the outline of a building beneath the sunken depths. He remembers, no, he knows. It began almost 2 months ago now. There had been a disastrous fracking incident somewhere on the European continent that saw a crevice violently emerge while spewing superheated and volatile gases into the atmosphere. All of the on-site workers perished in the chaos, leaving only a confusing skyward discharge to serve as a clue to this world's calamity. Days later, the skies darkened, bringing heavy winds and rumbling thunder. Soon the rains came, but they did not go. It was constant, non-stop, heavy rainfall, with no wind and only darkness to accompany the rainfall. By the third or fourth day stuck indoor, Mr. Green was smart enough to begin to ration his meager supplies, initially anticipating reduced market activity. By the fifth day, though, the situation got worse. Roadside gutters, drainage pipes, and sewer systems of all types began to overflow. The streets were not only flooded, but overrun. Soon, vehicles and anything not nailed down could be found floating on the street-side rivers. Mr. Green, a man in his late 30s, with no siblings and of late parents, insofar lucky in love, found himself hammering together a makeshift wooden raft, spawned of held together jerry cans under loose wooden beams with a series of trash bags to form a waterproof roof. It did well enough to store his supplies and keep them safe from the water as the environment changed. Several days of walking, and Mr. Green soon didn't immediately realize that there was no sign of activity coming from his surrounding neighbors. Even when he had made 2 extra rafts, able to hold more items and people, he had not realized how few people had come out looking for aid. Eventually, he had to personally brave the dirty running water on the streets that came up to chest level, carefully pushing open the gate of his compound in order to find that most of his neighbors had evacuated. Luckily for him, the landlord had recently started a construction project, so Mr. Green had been busy using all available lumber, which had required him to stay indoors, even as the water levels rose above his knee in his backyard workstation. There was little of use in the neighbors' homes, so he made do with more wood, tools he could scavenge, and as many plastic containers as he could manage. Secured via ropes, his rafts did not float away, even as the waters continued to rise beyond the walls of his tenant compound. Even as he lost sight of his home beneath the waters, Mr. Green and his raft system remained tethered to his building. Eventually, though, Mr. Green chose to detach from his location. He hastily sacrificed his first anchor rope with a knife due to the horrific sight that awaited him in the morning of the first month since the rains began. Hundreds of people, no, corpses, Their bloated faces shone brightly under the light of his rechargeable torch. He wept as he caught his anchor line, allowing himself to drift away indiscriminately. As a testament to Mr. Green's own ingenuity, he was able to remain shut-in, drifting aimlessly for days and surviving on his ever-declining supplies, shaken by the implication of the massive loss of life and the realization of his own potentially grim fate. The thought nearly drove him mad. And so, it was only when he had run out of his favorite cigarettes that the will to live had resurfaced. He wanted more. And by God, he will get more. He will eat more and he will live more. That was all he could do now. There was no need to wither and wallow away in sadness. Now, with near constant darkness and naught but water all around, it was impossible to get his bearings. However, his ingenuity shone through again. Tying all his remaining rope together to a small generator, which he dumped overboard, made a fitting anchor. And with his torchlight in a Ziploc bag, Mr. Green descended the depths to slowly discover he had miraculously drifted close enough to a ShopRite supermarket. He would descend with empty plastic jerry cans, using it for air. It took a few tries to get it right, finding a way to inhale without drinking so much water. But in time, he was able to make his way into the supermarket, only to discover most of the goods had been looted or swept away. Yet he continued and went further in, able to scavenge several equipment and supplies, wooden boards and nails, as well as screws and pliers of all sorts. He would also happen upon life-saving drugs in a pharmacy, shortly before a fever he had been managing for days finally pulled him low. For over a week, he was forced to light a fire to keep warm as he prayed the drugs he found would save his life. Several times he would recover enough only for an accident with one of his rafts to expose him to the elements again, weakening him once more. Eventually, he quickly made an open-area raft, which soon provided him with enough space to rest by an open fire. This open-area raft was taller than any of the other rafts he had made before. This had allowed a measure of airflow, allowing him to keep up a constant fire for days. That must have been why it happened. Why more light from the fire, consistently shining out into the darkness, acted as a beacon for a thoroughly drenched and hopeful Dorcas to paddle/drift over on her large, empty, heavy plastic drum. She wept as she begged for help, for food, for shelter. Mr. Green gave it, pitying the half-drowned girl even as she ate and answered his questions, telling of how she and her family had fled from one tall building to another, where each time, simply moving from one shelter to the next, spelled doom for members of her group and her family. How eventually a building beside their shelter had collapsed, and the wave it generated flooded their shelter, scattering her group in an instant. How she managed to remain afloat up until the drum bumped into her in the darkness and she clutched onto it for dear life. Her paddles were made of debris, and she had no idea how long she had hoped and floated in the dark waters. Several days by the fire, a few antibiotics later, and Dorcas soon became Mr. Green's assistant, providing decent company to ease the loneliness, as well as coming up with a few ideas of her own. So now, Mr. Green sits by a series of ropes, watching intently. Dorcas had used his system to descend. As he was a smoker, she had better lung capacity than he did. While down there, she would attach hooked ropes to any items for salvage, then tug on the rope and he would pull them up. Using this system, the both of them could secure more goods and carry up more supplies. The rains began on June 19th, 2022, and as of the 1st of August rolled around, our two survivors are determined to stay alive and thrive. Although their adventures are just beginning in this new era, this new drowned era. Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoy what we did and you like more of it, please remember to hit that like button. Share and subscribe also. It will be very helpful to our channel. Thank you for watching and have a wonderful day. Cheers.